1. 1 or 2 months ago, my girlfriend and I went out to our favorite bar. The drive is a tad longer than an hour to our place from the bar, primarily on barren interstate after the first 15 minutes, save for a few rural exits and one rest stop a little over halfway home. My girlfriend was sober that night and was driving. I had had a bit of a drink and was feeling warm and tipsy. I asked my girlfriend to make a quick stop at the rest area so I could pee, thanks beer. This is a normal stop for us to make if one of us has been drinking, since the rest area has its own direct exit and entrance, so it's faster than taking an actual exit into a town for a gas station. The rest area has only one road in and one out, and is surrounded by trees to the point you can't see the facility from the freeway. It has wooded walking trails. By the time I hopped out of the car at the rest stop, it was sometime around 3 a.m. As mentioned, this is a fairly regular stop, and until that day, the only other person I had seen at that rest stop around that time of night was the guy who maintains it. I walk in. The vending area is empty and completely silent. I make my way over to the men's room and push it open to be immediately startled by this old man, maybe mid-60s or so, standing immediately to the left of the door inside the bathroom. He was wearing what I can only describe as an Inspector Gadget coat and slacks. I noticed he has a cell phone in his hand when I opened the door, but it was hanging down at his side and the screen was not lit up. He stares at me and I stare back for a split second, then I get over it and pass him to head over to the urinals. I take the urinal closest to the sinks when I notice he made no indication he was going to walk out, because there is basically a wall of mirrors stretched out far enough that I can watch him in the mirror while I'm at the urinal. I unzip and keep my eyes on the mirror, making sure not to turn my head at all. By the time I look in the mirror, his phone is up in his hand and on, as if he were texting, but he seems to be staring at me rather than the phone. Either way, he definitely was not looking at his phone. A very long 60 seconds pass, and I absolutely cannot piss with this silent guy staring at my back from the door. Then, in the mirror, I notice him take a small, slow step forward. I tell myself I'm just tipsy and imagining it, to just get on with it and GTFO. Then he takes a more obvious step forward, and I put it in my pants while I speedwalk to the back handicap stall and lock the door. I went to the back where my feet were invisible and texted my girlfriend about the creepy guy inside with me. I sit and wait to hear the door open, signaling him leaving, but it still doesn't. After possibly the longest 8 minutes of my life, I hear the door open and close. I wait another 2 minutes and finally pee, in the stall though. I crack the stall door first. Luckily, the bathroom isn't huge and I had almost complete visibility of the room from the stall I picked. I saw no signs of anyone else, so I walked out, washed my hands, and beelined it back to the parking lot. I finally made it back to the car and asked my girlfriend what car the old guy got into. She turns to me wide-eyed and says, "He didn't get into one. He just walked across the parking lot and went into the tree line." With the rest stop being the only thing on the very short on and off ramps, and the other closest civilization being 5 miles by interstate, I don't know where that guy was going. Later I realized, although the rest area main room is small, there is a second entrance and exit on the side that goes to a patio backing up to the woods. I forget about it because I never use it, but if that guy had somehow managed to get a jump on me, he could have easily pulled me out of that door, and my girlfriend wouldn't have even seen it. I don't know if that was his plan, and I ruined it when I made my dash to the stall, but regardless, old man creeping in the rest stop bathroom in the wee hours, let's not meet again. 2. This happened about a year ago to me now. I've only ever shared the story with a couple of people. Big disclaimer before going forward. Don't worry, I realize I was a huge idiot in this situation, and my choices could have put me in danger. However, I made it out alive and unharmed, and that's all that matters. Even if I was too panicked to think properly and acted like a right idiot. Also, before I forget to mention, I'm a 21-year-old female. So it was around June 2019. I was doing a closing shift at the McDonald's I work at in town. I live in England, originally from Scotland. We close up at 2 a.m. on weekdays and 3 a.m. on the weekend. It had been a Saturday night shift, so I was finished and at the building by about 3:15 a.m. roughly. When this happened, I was living about a 10 to 15 minute walk away from my work in a flat that was mostly taken up by students. I didn't have money to spare to constantly get taxis, and I had been walking home at night for the past year with no incident, so of course, I didn't think any differently of doing it again. Majority of the walk was fine, and I was about 4 minutes away from the flat when I noticed a guy standing around near the corner I had to turn to get home. I am wary when I see other people, but usually they're drunk and mind their own, or just ask for directions, or it's a homeless person, as there's quite a lot in the city I live in, but at that time of night, again, they usually keep to themselves. This guy was dressed nice but casual, looked around mid-20s, well-groomed, tanned skin, and this really strong-smelling aftershave. He obviously was a regular at the gym too, because he had a muscular figure, and didn't seem to be too drunk by the looks of things, but who knows. I tried to keep my distance, but he approached me and started making really casual conversation, asking me what my name was, complimenting my accent, and asking where I was from. I stupidly engaged with him, but gave him a fake name and made it clear I wasn't up for a chat. I should have been firm with my words, but I'm way too introverted and shy to speak up. Even my boyfriend complains I talk too quietly sometimes, and I struggle to be direct with people. Throughout the whole conversation, he was always giving me this unsettling smile and would try to touch my arm or play with my hair, which I made as clear as I possibly could that I didn't approve of. Not that he was even listening. He would just say something along the lines of, "But you're so pretty." Not flattering at all when it's a man who won't take no for an answer. Anyways, this guy asks me for a hug, and even though I refused him as politely as possible, he did it anyways. I froze up for a couple seconds before I moved away, which thankfully he let me do. He was being extremely creepy at this point and tried feeling over my sides as he hugged me, which gave me even more alarm bells ringing in my head. I had to leave, and as I was walking away I heard, "I'll walk you home. Where do you live?" Unfortunately, I had nowhere else to go but home. Nobody else was around, and it was too early in the morning. My roommate was also back at his own house as he went back home every weekend. I had hold of my keys in my pocket and just hoped once I got into the building, I could find a way in without this guy being able to invite himself in. I refused to walk home, but he followed me anyways, walking about 8 to 10 feet away from me as I was speeding up at this point, but caught up as I crossed the road. I don't know why, but I decided to go the long way to get to my building, which is an extra 2 minutes, so not that long. And as I was approaching the flat, I felt this horrible sinking feeling in my chest. The door to the building closes really slow at first, before slamming shut, so I knew even if I walked in he could potentially follow me inside, and that puts me at an even greater risk. By this point, he was begging to be let inside. He said he was extremely thirsty and wanted some water, but I told him my roommate was sleeping. A subtle way to try to deter him by showing I wasn't alone, but that didn't seem to faze him. He was trying to be touchy and just kept pleading with me to be let inside, but I kept my ground and said no as best as possible. As he was talking to me, I managed to use my fob on the door, and only open it enough to carefully slip through. However, he was right at the door, and I didn't want to make him upset, so I apologized and told him no once again. Luckily, he had to move away from the door as someone wanted to get into the building. The guy entering the flat asked if everything was okay when he saw me, but I stupidly said everything was fine. That did give me a chance to move away from the door and let it close once the guy walked through. He either worked or lived here, but I wasn't sure. I didn't even look back to the guy. I ran up the stairs to my flat as fast as I could. I didn't get any sleep that night, and from that moment on I made sure to always have money aside for a taxi. I think I walked home maybe once more between June and October before I moved. Really scary stuff, and I'm glad I never saw him again after that. 3. This happened 2 summers ago, while I was house-sitting out in California for an older couple I had met at a conference for work. It had seemed like a dream scenario. The couple wanted a vacation in Hawaii for 2 weeks, but didn't want to board their cats, and I had been chatting with them about wanting to visit California again, where they happened to live because I had loved it the first time I went, and we figured that we could mutually benefit if I came out and house-sat for them. So I flew out there, and they showed me around for a few days, taught me how to care for the cats, 2 of them, one that was extremely shy and I barely saw, which is important later, and their plants. gave me access to their house and cars. These people were so generous. And before I knew it, I had dropped them off at the airport and I was on my own. At first, it really was the dream vacation. I was staying in Oakland and making forays into San Fran, Sonoma, Monterey. In the morning, I could walk out the front door and shortly be hiking the paths surrounding nearby Mount Diablo, and I was just ultra content with the world. I was so enamored by the area that I had actually started taking some steps to relocate out there even. But then one day, about halfway through my final week there, when I got back to the house, I felt really odd. Almost like I shouldn't go inside. I shook it off and went inside anyway, because it was getting late and I needed to put out dinner for the cats. Once I was inside, I forced myself to ignore how off I felt, and I made some food for myself, went to bed, and was shocked to find the shy cat hiding under my bed and crying. This was the first time I had even seen her close up. The entire time I had been there up to that point, she never left my host's bedroom unless she didn't realize I was around. Again, I ignored feeling weird and just assumed she had decided I was okay and went to bed. I did start locking my bedroom door that night, though. I also remember that about halfway through the night, I thought I heard someone walking around in the gravel outside of my window. But after listening for a bit, I didn't hear anything else and went back to sleep. The day after, in the morning, I still felt a little odd, but kept up with my plans for the day. I drove out to a little music festival in Sonoma, and went clothes shopping, and had an overall great day. When I got back to the house, though, I found the front door locked in a way I hadn't left it. Basically, my host never locked the deadbolt, only the lower second lock. And that's the only lock my key worked on, so I never messed with the deadbolt, but it was definitely locked. So I had to call my hosts and find the hide key, which, to their credit, safety-wise, was buried in like a foot underneath a bush outside, and had definitely not been unearthed for a long time. So I used that, went inside, and kept the key with me just in case it happened again. And it did, but with a different door. This time I stepped outside into the garage to get a drink. When I turned around to go back into the house, the door was shut and locked. I could use my normal key on that door, but I was still pretty bewildered. My own cats are whack, so I think in my mind I was trying to come up with a way the cats could be locking me out of the house. But I was coming up empty. I decided I must have been misunderstanding how the locks worked, and just wrote it off, and started checking and triple-checking locks when I went out of the house or into the garage. That night when I went to bed, the really awful feeling of unease was still there, and so was the shy cat, who was clearly unhappy to see me, but also wouldn't leave my room. But again, I just locked my bedroom door and went to sleep. The next morning I felt awful, nausea, body ache. I had no desire to leave the house, so I decided to stay in and Netflix for the day. This vacation stay was like a full 2 weeks, so I didn't feel like I was in a hurry to get all my touristy things in anyways. But as the day went on, I started to feel that feeling of wrongness again, and it morphed into feeling incredibly watched. Around mid-afternoon, it got to the point that I was so uneasy that, even feeling awful, I decided to go out of the house for a bit to shake it off. I was getting a bit low on food, so went to the grocery store and bought a couple food items that I didn't think would hurt my stomach. And as I started to leave the checkout, the cashier said the generic, "Have a great evening." And I just instantly started crying, shocking myself and the poor cashier, because I just had this intrusive thought that, you might be the last person to ever say that to me. When I got to my car, I was still crying and my entire body was telling me not to drive back to the house. I couldn't not, though, because I didn't want to neglect the cats, so I drove back, parked in the driveway, and convinced myself after about half an hour to just go open the front door. Once I did that, I thought I would get over it and be able to go in and at least feed the cats. And then maybe I'd go get a hotel room after. But my body physically would not let me inside. It was like I was stuck in the entryway. I then made a deal with myself. I would yell into the house saying I had already called the police, and that they were on their way. In panic logic, I figured that would make anyone in the house leave. So I faced the inside of the house looking down the hallway towards the bedrooms and did just that. The second I had finished saying, They're almost here, so if you want to avoid being arrested, you need to leave now. The light in my host's room turned on and I heard some banging. I immediately hightailed it back to my car, called the police for real, and proceeded to have a mental breakdown while talking to the dispatcher. Once they got there, they checked the house and didn't find anyone, but the double doors in my host's bedroom were left wide open. I'm so glad the cats didn't get out. And there was a pile of food wrappers in the corner behind the blinds, so they said it looked like someone had been there. What makes it so scary to me is that nothing was taken, and that based on the shape of the house, that would have been the perfect vantage point to see me in the living room, as I stayed home sick. To explain this, the house was in an L shape, and from the windows into the garden that were in my host's bedroom, you could see into the living room windows. Also, the minute the police were gone, they said they couldn't prove anyone was there. There were no signs of forced entry, and we couldn't get a hold of my host immediately to verify if anything had been taken, etc. Which, once they were back, they verified that nothing had been taken, so they said they'd patrol a bit, but nothing else. The shy cat was right back in my host's bedroom, and I didn't see her again until I left to go back home. So basically, I think the intruder had been there at least 2 days, forcing her to choose between two strangers, and leading her to choose the one that was at least a little less strange. Me. It messed me up pretty bad, especially because they didn't catch the person, and didn't seem to have any desire to look. And I still had to stay in that house for the next 3 days. Nothing else odd happened, and I didn't feel anything off the rest of the time I was there, but the damage was done. I never felt completely safe in a home without doing a complete search before bed since. But I'm extremely glad my gut spoke up. I guess I'd rather have some residual anxiety than be dead. So whoever was in my host's house watching me, let's please never meet. Once my host got back, we talked a little about what happened. They had a few ideas, none of which I liked, but it was nice to have some potential explanations. One was that normally they have a maid service, and this one makes the most sense to me, because my hosts say that they're the only people who ever lock that deadbolt, even though they've been told not to. So it could have been one of them, or one of their family members, thinking that it would be safe to rob the house because their clients were gone. In that case, they may have just been caught in there and waiting for me to leave. The second makes me a bit more nervous, but apparently they have an elderly neighbor whose son lives with her on and off, who, while living there, is often spotted in the middle of the street yelling about demons, and how they're in his mom and other scary things. But they were under the impression he wasn't living there now, so they doubted it would have been him. Also, they admitted they've had several students, we're all teachers, house sit for them in the past, and it's always possible one of them had made a key over the years. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 486. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. What day is this meant for? Monday, okay. Okay, just throwing this out there, would you guys like me to keep doing videos as normal, which is literally no change, or would you like me to do maybe one less scary video a week and do an extra funny one? Completely up to you guys. You are the audience, so you get to decide. Work-wise for me, it's not really any extra. Well, okay, it's like 2 stories extra recording, but that's not a big deal. So, up to you. Just leave your feedback in the comments, and I will make the adjustment the following week, if there's one to be made, and if there's not, business as usual. Okay, anything else? I just want to say thanks to everyone who's been joining me on the occasional extra stream I've been doing. It's been, because I haven't really been going out, I've had a little more time, not a massive amount more time, because generally, work. But it has been nice to join you guys at slightly different times, and I will possibly, in the coming week, I will do a stream much earlier, early evening. So if you're in the UK, you're more likely going to have a chance to catch it. If you're in the US, it probably be much earlier in the day. But, just to do a stream for the folks who can't use, maybe it's too late for them to usually catch your streams. I'll probably be playing Fallout or maybe the Sherlock Holmes game. Although I did get the Resident Evil 2 remake a while ago, I managed to get it when it was on sale last time, and I haven't even started it yet, so that's a possibility as well. Well, no, actually, no, it's not. A lot of shooting in that. Maybe not that one. We'll see. Okay, and with that, I think I'll head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.